They put up 29 houses, those scavengers from the homeowners association, right along the edge of what they assumed was nothing more than a scenic water feature. What they either didn't know or chose to ignore was that my family had controlled that lake's water levels for 3 generations, and I wasn't about to let their greed destroy what belonged to us. So once the final nail was driven and the sold signs were planted, I quietly walked to the old spillway controls, just as my grandfather had taught me, and started turning the wheel. Some people believe they can simply take what they want. I was about to show them very expensively and very weightily what water rights truly mean. Back in the late 1920s, my great-grandfather, man with more foresight than an entire room full of modern city planners, were the valley and the natural spring that fed it. He wasn't wealthy by society's definition, but he was rich in practical wisdom and a deep understanding of the land. He didn't see an opportunity for exploitation. He saw one for creation of refuge. With his own hands, a few trusted friends, local stone, and raw ingenuity, he built the dam himself. It wasn't some massive concrete government eyesore. It was an earth-and-rock-filled dam, carefully designed. The sturdy spillway system that allowed precise control of the water level. His vision was simple and pure. A private lake. A place for family, reflection, fishing, and wildlife. And that's exactly what he built. My grandfather inherited it and cared for it. He taught my father everything he knew, and eventually that responsibility passed to me. The deeds were airtight. The water rights were thoroughly documented and registered with every relevant state and county authority long before zoning laws ever complicated the surrounding land. The lake, its bed, the dam, and exclusive control over the water levels were undeniably mine for decades. My family quietly acted as caretakers of this carefully engineered ecosystem. Summers meant higher water for recreation and ecological balance. Winters meant slightly lower levels to handle snowmelt and heavy rains, always preserving the dam's integrity. Locals knew it as Old Man Hemlock's Lake, named affectionately after my great-grandfather, and they respected its private status. Occasionally, a polite neighbor might ask permission to fish. If they followed the rules, catch and release, pack out everything, we sometimes said yes. Life was peaceful. Development was slow, organic. No one even imagined pushing that close. An idea that someone would build houses so near the shoreline that they could be swallowed if I raised the lake to its legally permitted maximum would have once sounded ridiculous. The high water mark was clearly defined, documented in surveys, and visible in the vegetation line. We never had to enforce it. It simply existed. The lake breathed, and we helped it breathe properly. I spent my childhood on those shores learning to swim, fish, and recognize bird calls. I knew every cove, every submerged log, how the light touched the water at dawn and dusk. This wasn't just land. It was part of me, a living record of my family's bond with the earth. The thought of it being commercialized or disrespected was intolerable. I still had the original dam engineering plans, the hydrological studies my grandfather commissioned in the 1960s when a small upstream project emerged. I understood the power I held and respected it. This wasn't a toy. It was a duty. The spillway's control mechanism was a beautifully crafted cast-iron wheel, deliberately heavy, requiring effort to turn so no accidental changes could ever occur. It sat inside a small stone pump house, like a miniature fortress guarding the lake's heart. The first warning sign didn't come from rising water. It came from surveyors, not ours. Strangers with flashy equipment trampling through brush on the far side of the lake. Land that had always served as an undeveloped buffer. I approached, polite but firm. They were evasive, muttering about a residential project, then packed up quickly when I asked about permits and property lines. That was the first time I heard the name Pinnacle Pines, HOA, venture capital, backed, developer known for aggressive tactics and cutting corners. Soon, glossy brochures appeared around town advertising luxury lakeside living. Lakeside, my lake. Their maps were cleverly distorted, making my private lake appear like a shared community amenity, complete with cartoon boats and smiling families. There was no mention of private ownership, no hint that every drop of water depended entirely on my consent. Their first official contact wasn't a conversation, it was a demand letter. A slick law firm informed me that Pinnacle Pines LLC, soon to become the HOA, intended to make reasonable use of the adjacent waterway and required unrestricted shoreline access. They even suggested I could be liable if I refused. I laughed, but without humor. My attorney, Arthur Steady, experienced man who'd handled my family's affairs for years, reviewed it and chuckled thoughtfully. "They're ambitious," he said, "and completely clueless about water rights." We replied politely but firmly, enclosing copies of my deeds, original water grants, and clear boundary maps showing the entire lake including its bed belonged to me. No access, any use would be trespassing. Certified mail. Return receipt. The receipt came back signed by Brenda Eseth, HOA president, before the first house was even sold. A title meant to project authority she hadn't earned. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the bulldozers came. They cleared trees right up to my boundary. The vibrations shook my home. Dust coated everything. And Brenda herself arrived, tight-lipped, sharp-voiced, driving a golf cart like a tiny chariot. A hard hat perched atop perfectly styled hair. One afternoon, she drove straight to my gate. "Mr. Hemlock," she snapped, "your stance on the lake is unreasonable. Our residents expect waterfront amenities." I told her calmly, "It's not a waterfront amenity. It's my private property. Your brochures are misleading, and that's your problem, not mine." She accused me of lacking community spirit. I ended the conversation and told her to stay off my land. She spun her cart dramatically and sped away, offended and furious. I knew then this was only the beginning. They underestimated me. Construction exploded, hammers, saws, backup alarms. Cheap, fast houses rose with vinyl siding and oversized windows staring greedily at my lake. What alarmed me most was their location. They weren't just near the water. They were built directly on its historical floodplain. Comparing my great-grandfather's surveys with modern data made my stomach drop. The legal high-water mark reached exactly where their foundations were being poured. Either their surveyors were incompetent or they ignored reality entirely. Trash began appearing near my shoreline. Workers wandered onto my land. Everything was photographed. Every incident documented. Complaints were sent. Responses were dismissive. Then came the marketing blitz. Billboards, websites, renderings of families kayaking on my lake. A fake dock photoshopped onto my shoreline. Arthur fired off C. Sandus's letters. Their lawyers responded with meaningless legal jargon. Brenda escalated. One morning I found her with two muscle-headed companions near our old boat ramp. She talked about a community canoe rack. I warned her clearly. One more trespass and arrests would follow. She retreated, furious and shaken. They hoped I'd cave. I didn't. Late one night, reviewing the original dam specs, everything clicked. The maximum safe water level engineered for a 100-year flood was clearly defined and legally mine. Comparing those elevations with the new houses made it unmistakable. All 29 homes sat below that line. They hadn't built near my lake. They built in it. Arthur confirmed everything. A retired engineer confirmed the dam's integrity. Slowly, carefully, I prepared, greased the mechanism, cleaned the wheel, planned to rise on a gray Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. I entered the pump house and began turning the wheel, slowly, methodically. By afternoon, panic erupted across the lake. Lawns vanished. Patios flooded. Phones rang. Lawyers screamed. The sheriff came and left. Everything I did was legal. By evening, water sat 2 feet deep inside the lowest homes. The legal storm followed, and Pinnacle Pines lost everything. The lake stayed full for weeks. Nature reclaimed the mess. Eventually, bankruptcy followed. I lowered the lake just enough to leave the land permanently undevelopable. My sanctuary was safe, and the lesson was learned. If you ever buy property near water, check the deeds. Check the water rights, because you never know who controls the wheel. Drop a comment if you think they deserved it.